The sun was blazing over Ouagadougou. Crowds filled the public square, waiting for a ceremony they thought would be a celebration. Banners hung, drums beat, soldiers stood guard, and then, instead of honor, came accusation. Instead of applause came silence. At the center of it all stood a foreign woman, once praised as a hero. But today President Ibrahim Traoré was about to expose her as a thief. A thief who dared to steal gold from the soil of Burkina Faso. What happened next? No one in that square would ever forget. The heat of midday pressed down on Ouagadougou like fire from the sky. In the heart of the capital, a massive square had been prepared for a national event. Colorful banners rippled in the dusty wind. Drums pounded in rhythm, and thousands of people gathered shoulder to shoulder, waiting for a ceremony that promised hope. They believed they were about to witness history, a celebration of generosity, a foreign woman being honored for her unselfish work in Burkina Faso. Her name was Camila Reyes. To the crowd, she was a savior. She had built schools, distributed food, and promised medicine for the poor. Children wore shirts with her foundation's logo. Farmers spoke her name with gratitude. Journalists called her the Angel of West Africa. Everything about this day was supposed to glorify her. Cameras were ready. News anchors rehearsed their lines, and families waited in the scorching sun just to catch a glimpse of her on stage. But what the people didn't know was that their celebration was about to be ripped apart. Behind the drums, behind the flags, and behind the carefully painted smiles, soldiers already knew the truth. Boxes of so-called medical aid carried something else. Trucks meant for widows and orphans had been transporting stolen gold out of the country. And standing in the shadows, President Ibrahim Traoré had made his decision. Today would not be about celebration. Today would be about exposure. In front of the entire nation, he was going to unmask a thief. At first, even President Ibrahim Traoré was impressed. When he visited the dusty villages of Koudougou, he saw schools freshly painted in bright colors, classrooms filled with chalkboards, benches and eager children raising their hands. On the walls, the logo of Camila's foundation was everywhere. He watched as mothers stood in line receiving sacks of grain with her smiling face printed on the bags. He saw children clutching small bottles of medicine stamped with her NGO's seal. Traoré, a soldier hardened by battles and betrayal, paused in silence that day. Perhaps, he thought, not all foreigners come to exploit us. Maybe this woman is different. Even the elders whispered blessings in her name. Farmers said their fields were producing better harvests, thanks to the fertilizer she had provided. The people spoke of her like a miracle, a bridge between Africa and the world. Cameras captured Traoré shaking her hand, his stern face softened with a rare smile. The image spread fast, the leader of Burkina Faso side by side with a foreign humanitarian. To the outside world, it looked like a partnership of hope. But behind the applause, small doubts began to creep in. Why were the schools always locked after dark? Why were her trucks constantly moving at night far from the villages? Why did her guards seem more like soldiers than aid workers? Traoré had admired her work. But soon admiration would turn into suspicion. For weeks, whispers reached the palace. Traders at the border spoke of trucks slipping through the night, heavily guarded, never inspected. Miners deep in the forest murmured of foreigners paying them in cash, then disappearing with gold that never reached the nation's reserves. At first it sounded like rumor, but then evidence arrived. One evening, a young captain from the intelligence unit entered Traoré's office. His boots were covered in dust, his uniform soaked with sweat. Without a word, he placed a small wooden box on the president's desk. Inside were gold bars. Not just any gold. Each one was stamped with Burkina Faso's national seal. "Sir," the captain whispered, "these were found hidden inside a truck labeled as medical aid, a truck belonging to Camila Reyes's foundation." Traoré's jaw tightened. He lifted one of the bars, its weight heavy in his hand. The silence in the room was suffocating. The captain continued, "We intercepted documents too. Shipping records. Her NGO has been moving tons of gold through secret routes, disguised as humanitarian supplies, and she has partners outside our borders. This is not charity, Mr. President, this is theft." Gasps echoed in the chamber as other officers leaned in. The evidence was undeniable. Traoré rose slowly from his chair, his face calm but burning with fury. For months, this woman had been praised as a savior. But behind the banners and the handshakes, she had robbed the soil of his ancestors. His voice cut the silence. If the people trusted her in the daylight, then the people will see her unmasked in the daylight. And so, the stage was set. The square that was meant to celebrate Camila Reyes would instead become her judgment ground. But how would Traore confront her? And what would happen when thousands realized their so-called savior
was a thief?
Once the evidence was undeniable, Ibrahim Traoré knew one thing: the truth could not be buried in shadows. This was not a matter for secret trials or hidden prisons. No, the people themselves deserved to see the mask ripped away. Inside the dimly lit war room, maps of the capital lay spread across the table. Intelligence officers, trusted generals, and a handful of ministers leaned in as Traoré spoke. "Tomorrow," he said firmly, "the nation will gather for the ceremony. She believes it will be her crowning moment. Instead, it will be her downfall." The plan was simple yet ruthless. The celebration would continue as scheduled. The banners would stay. The drums would play. The cameras would roll. Camila Reyes would step onto that stage smiling, ready to be honored. And then, before the world, Traoré would confront her. The gold bars, the shipping records, the testimonies, everything would be revealed in the open square. "Let her face the judgment of the people she betrayed," Traoré declared. Soldiers were ordered to secure every exit. The trucks belonging to her NGO were placed under surveillance. Her closest aides were quietly taken into custody. Not a single move would escape Traoré's eyes. That night, while the city slept, the preparations were set in motion. And as dawn approached, the stage was no longer a place of honor. It had become a trap. But the question remained: when the truth was revealed, would the crowd erupt in rage or in disbelief? While the president and his men prepared in silence, Camila Reyes sat in her luxurious office, completely unaware. The room was a world away from the dusty villages she claimed to serve. Polished mahogany desks, imported leather chairs, air conditioning humming softly against the heat outside. On the walls, framed photographs showed her smiling with children, shaking hands with elders, cutting ribbons for new projects. To her staff, she was untouchable. That afternoon, she leaned back in her chair, sipping a glass of imported wine. The city outside roared with traffic, but her mind was on tomorrow's ceremony. "By this time tomorrow," she said confidently to her assistant, "the president himself will thank me in front of the entire nation. The cameras will broadcast my name across the world. More donations will pour in. And our work will only expand." Her staff nodded in admiration. None dared to question her. But on her desk, beneath the neat piles of paperwork, lay documents she thought no one would ever see. Shipment records, coded messages, secret accounts, evidence of the empire she had built, not on kindness, but on stolen gold. Camila smiled, believing the future was hers. What she didn't know was that the very stage she dreamed of had already been turned into her stage of ruin. The square was alive with music, flags, and cheering. Camila Reyes stepped onto the grand stage draped in white, waving like a queen to her adoring crowd. Cameras flashed. Children shouted her name, then silence. The drum stopped. Soldiers shifted. And from the other side of the platform, President Ibrahim Traoré appeared. His uniform crisp, his red beret glowing beneath the sun. He raised his hand. The crowd hushed instantly. "People of Burkina Faso, you have been deceived," gasps rippled through the thousands. Camila's smile faltered. From a wooden chest, soldiers lifted bars of gold gleaming under the daylight. The crowd erupted in shock. Mothers cried out. Men shouted in fury, Traoré pointing at Camila. "She came here dressed as a savior, but behind her gifts. She robbed our soil. She is not your friend. She is a thief." The square exploded with rage. Camila froze, trembling as the very people who once adored her now demanded justice. The air in the square grew heavier. What had begun as a celebration now felt like a trial under the open sky. President Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward, his voice steady, each word echoing across the crowd. "You trusted her with your children. You trusted her with your food. But while you believed in her promises, she loaded our gold into hidden trucks and sold the future of Burkina Faso." Two soldiers marched up, carrying sealed boxes. With a crack of wood, they pried them open. Inside, glittering bars of gold stacked neatly, each one marked with the nation's seal. The sun hit the metal, blinding the eyes of the crowd. Gasps and cries erupted. Mothers clutched their children. Men shouted in anger. Another officer held up documents, stamped records, forged invoices, coded shipping routes. Traore raised them high for all to see. Here are the lies she fed us. Here is the proof of betrayal. The crowd's murmurs turned into roars. The woman who once walked among them as a savior now stood exposed as a parasite, and as the evidence piled higher, Camila Reyes's mask crumbled lower. She wasn't smiling now. She was trapped, surrounded, with nowhere to run. But the question remained, would Traore hand her to the courts? Or let the people deliver justice themselves? Camilla's face turned pale as the gold bars glimmered under the sun. She raised her trembling hands, her voice breaking through the roars of the crowd. No, this is a mistake. Those supplies were for aid. Those documents are forged. I came here to help you. The people booed, shouting her name with fury. Stones rattled in their fists. Mothers spat at the stage. Traore's eyes, cold and unflinching, cut through her words. He stepped closer, his voice like thunder. Enough lies. You fed our children crumbs while you filled your pockets with gold. Do you dare call that aid? The crowd erupted, chanting his name, drowning her protests. Camilla tried once more, tears streaking her face. But every word was swallowed by rage. Her mask of sainthood was shattered, replaced by the image of a thief cornered by truth. News of the public trial spread like wildfire. Across Africa, headlines praised Traore's courage. But in the West, silence turned quickly into unease. Embassies in Ouagadougou sent urgent cables back to their capitals. Diplomats requested clarifications, aid organizations demanded explanations, and behind closed doors pressure mounted. How could you humiliate one of our citizens in such a way? Foreign representatives whispered. They called it an overreaction. They asked for her release. Some even threatened to suspend funding. But Traore did not flinch. To every envoy who sat across from him, he gave the same answer. Burkina Faso is not for sale. Our soil, our gold, and our people will never again be stolen in daylight. His words echoed beyond the palace walls, igniting pride across the nation. The world had tried to bend him, but instead, his defiance bent the world's gaze toward Burkina Faso. The woman once called an angel now sat behind rusted iron bars. Gone were the white dresses, the flashing cameras, the adoring crowds. In their place, a damp concrete cell, a thin blanket, and the sound of chains clinking in the corridor. Camila Reyes stared at the walls, her hands trembling. For the first time, there were no speeches to hide behind. No aides to applaud her lies, only silence, and the weight of betrayal. From her tiny window, she could hear the chants outside, children playing in the distance shouting Traore's name. The very people who once cheered for her had erased her from their hearts. This was her reality now. Not the heroine of Burkina Faso, not the angel of charity, but a thief condemned by the truth. The square still trembled with chants, the gold bars glinting under the sun. Traore stepped forward, his voice carrying like thunder across the crowd. Let this day be written in our history. No thief, no foreign power, no traitor will ever again strip Burkina Faso of her dignity. We are poor only when we allow ourselves to be robbed, but united. We are richer than all the gold in the world. The people roared, their voices shaking the earth. Men lifted their fists. Women raised their children high. The nation had witnessed more than justice. They had witnessed rebirth. And in that moment, Ibrahim Traoré's words became more than a speech. They became a vow, carved into the heart of a nation. As the sun dipped lower over Ouagadougou, the square slowly emptied. The gold was secured. The thief was gone. But Traoré's voice lingered in the air, heavier than the drums, louder than the chants. Justice is not about vengeance. It is about vigilance. If we wish to protect our children, our soil, and our future, then we must open our eyes. The next thief will not come dressed in chains. They will come smiling, offering gifts, but we must be ready. The crowd fell silent, each word sinking deep into their hearts. That night, Burkina Faso learned a lesson greater than punishment. The true strength of a nation lies not in anger, but in awareness. And so the story of Camila Reyes ended not with applause, but with iron bars. Her tale is a warning, a reminder that betrayal often hides behind the mask of kindness. Burkina Faso stood tall that day, not because it punished a thief, but because it refused to stay blind. The lesson is clear. True freedom is not just won on battlefields. It is protected every single day, with vigilance, courage, and unity. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Traoré's Rich Africa for more powerful stories. And if you think this moment was bold, you must see what happened when Ibrahim Traoré openly confronted foreign officials and left them humiliated in front of the world. That story will shock you even more, and it's waiting for you right here.